No disaster reshapes civilization as silently and completely as nuclear winter, because when it begins, the world does not collapse in an instant, it collapses in a sequence of events that unfold quietly, relentlessly, and without mercy. It starts with explosions that fade quickly, but the consequences that follow continue spreading across continents, across oceans, and across every corner of the planet. Most people imagine nuclear war as fire, but the real danger begins after the fire disappears, when millions of tons of black soot rise into the upper atmosphere, far above the clouds, far above the weather, into a layer where rain cannot reach, and where nothing can remove it. And once the soot enters that layer, sunlight begins to fade. The world does not become dark suddenly. Instead, every sunrise becomes slightly weaker, every morning slightly colder, every evening slightly dimmer, until people begin to realize that the sky is not just cloudy, it is changing. It becomes a permanent, muted gray that stretches endlessly across the horizon. Shadows soften, sunlight loses strength. The world feels like it is preparing for a storm that never arrives. And as sunlight fades, temperatures begin to collapse. A planet designed for warmth moves toward cold. Snow begins falling earlier in the year. Frost appears in seasons it never belonged to, and farms that once fed millions begin to fail. The drop is not gentle. It is sharp, aggressive, and global. Temperatures fall by entire degrees within months, disrupting ecosystems that took centuries to form. Rivers freeze earlier, lakes harden into sheets of ice, and regions that once supported agriculture become barren. And as the land cools, food production collapses. Agriculture depends on climate stability. Nuclear winter destroys that stability. Crops like corn, wheat, and rice begin to struggle, and the harvests shrink dramatically. Farmers watch seeds fail, fields die, and livestock weaken from the cold. Food becomes scarce, and the scarcity spreads from farms to markets, from markets to cities, and from cities to entire nations. This is how civilization begins to weaken, not with explosions, but with hunger. As food declines, supply chains collapse. Trucks stop moving because fuel is rationed, ships remain idle at ports, and trains reduce their routes because power grids cannot support entire networks under extreme cold. The global economy, which relies on constant motion, slows down and then stops. Cities that depend entirely on imported food feel the impact first. Shelves empty within days. People rush to gather whatever supplies remain. Panic becomes common, and in many places, authorities struggle to maintain order. Inside homes, families gather around radios, candles, and maps, trying to understand what has happened. They listen for official broadcasts, updates, or instructions, but often receive only short emergency messages. Communities begin forming small groups to share knowledge and resources, because they realize quickly that survival requires cooperation. People prepare shelters, seal windows, insulate rooms, and gather together to conserve warmth. Heat becomes the difference between life and death. In nuclear winter, heating systems fail frequently as power becomes unstable. Wood stoves, blankets, and insulated shelters become essential. Entire neighborhoods choose to live in fewer homes, merging resources and energy. Warmth becomes a shared responsibility. Every fire, every stove, every candle carries meaning. The cold is constant, and the fight against it never stops. With outdoor farming collapsing, food begins to come from improvised indoor gardens. People use lamps, heaters, and hydroponic systems to grow small quantities of vegetables. Communities share kitchens and ration food carefully. Every calorie matters. Waste is unthinkable. Cold also disrupts water systems. Pipes freeze, reservoirs become inaccessible, and clean water grows scarce. People melt snow, store containers, and build simple filtration systems. Water becomes more valuable than fuel. Every drop must be protected. Medical care becomes decentralized. Hospitals face shortages and overcrowding, so communities learn basic medical skills, bandaging, infection control, hypothermia treatment. Tools that once seemed simple become essential, and knowledge becomes the most powerful resource. Where resources shrink, conflict grows, but communities that maintain rules, cooperation, and shared responsibility survive longer. Calm leadership and collective security help prevent panic. People take turns standing watch, checking supply stocks, and managing resources. Order becomes survival. History shows us that humanity survives disasters not through strength alone, but through unity. From famines to wars to blackouts, communities that work together endured. Nuclear winter will demand the same discipline, the same cooperation, and the same courage. In a broken world, low-tech tools become the most valuable. Wind-up radios that do not require electricity, solar cookers that work even with weak sunlight, seed packets that can restart entire food systems. These items, once overlooked, become priceless, and eventually, after months or even years, the soot begins to settle. The sun grows stronger, temperatures slowly rise, and the world begins to thaw. Communities emerge from shelters, rebuild fields, repair homes, and restore hope. The return of light marks not just the end of darkness, but the beginning of a new chapter for humanity. This is WarCast Nova. Prepare your community, prepare for tomorrow, and join us for our next chapter, the first 72 hours after a nuclear strike.